What's up, guys? So I guess I discovered these two new techniques to improve my painting. But first, let me tell you what happened. At first, I thought that I wasn't painting enough detail or accurately enough. And even when I spent the extra hours trying to paint every minuscule detail or every technique that I knew, something still didn't sit well with me. So after a while, I resigned myself to the idea that this was the best I can be and that my paintings were already good enough. But after looking at them over and over again, I knew something didn't quite feel right. Then I made these two changes with the way I approach painting, and they helped me make a huge difference. The first thing I started doing was using more dry brushing. So let's talk about that first. So when I tried to blend the paint before, all I did was mix the paint on the canvas side by side. Don't get me wrong, it still does have its time and place. But when you are painting small objects, especially in a landscape, that's not going to work. This is where dry brushing comes in. When you want to create some more soft edges or create a more ethereal appearance in your painting, dry brushing can help a lot. The way I do it is once I finish adding something to the canvas, I can either continue using whatever paint is left over to apply some soft brushing to kind of feather in the detail, or I can clean up the brush entirely and come back to that item I painted and use a dry brush to kind of spread out the edges of the paint. This can help a great deal, especially with landscapes. If you paint your landscape with complete precision but neglect blending anything, your painting is going to turn out very stiff and rigid. You may have indeed gotten down the detail you were aiming for or matched the reference photo, but the painting may be missing that aesthetic appeal. That's the difference between painting and real life. In real life, a photograph of a landscape is exactly what it looks like. A painting of the exact same landscape is going to have more exaggerated colors and textures of certain elements depending on the distance. This is almost always the case unless you are going for hyper-realism, which in that case you are going to go for matching the photo exactly. However, why not do both? Go for matching the photo and have some exaggerated larger-than-life elements for the painting. The more I do all these paintings and study them, the more I realize how relative so many of these ideas are. There are so many great paintings that use exceptions to the rule. I guess these are just some guidelines, but they do help, and have helped me a great deal. This is my own personal evolution as an artist. Your artwork is going to evolve over time too, and your progression is going to be different than mine. So next time when you're stuck at a painting and you feel like you're not making any progress with your skill level, try this dry brushing technique and see if it adds any more life to your painting. And who knows, maybe that old painting sitting in your closet could become your next masterpiece. The next change I made was that I started focusing more on creating better vanishing points. For the longest time, I didn't think too much about this until recently when I was working on a new landscape painting. This painting in particular I'm creating out of imagination, and usually I don't have too much problems with sketching out where everything is going to be. This time I wanted to create some more distance with some objects, like having some hills in the background as well as a river disappearing into it. Soon I realized I was having difficulty creating a vanishing point because I haven't done things like this that often. I noticed how many of my landscapes that I had done actually didn't have a high degree of vanishing points. Many landscape paintings, especially the really epic ones, have a large range of perspective where there are large objects that are relatively close. Then there are objects really far away that vanish into the horizon, and then the objects in between these 2 points. Vanishing points like this usually consist of mountains or rivers that disappear into the horizon and really help create a more epic looking picture. The trick here is painting the things in between and reconciling the space that holds these elements together. It's easy to paint small things from a distance, but the difficult thing I discovered was painting the transition between the far away things and the objects up close. Be mindful of the sizes of the things you paint here. Are the trees in proportion to where they're supposed to be? Are there any objects that are too large for that particular location? What about the angles? Are they congruent with the way they line up? What helps for these ideas is having a series of imaginary lines going across the canvas. This helps a great deal when it comes to placing objects in the right proportion throughout the entire painting. Another important thing to remember when you're doing this is paying attention to the color value and contrast. The objects on the same imaginary line should have similar color value and contrast. However, the exception to this is if there's an incline, like a hill or a ridge where the object is elevated. The key to remember here is just to understand how far or how close an object is relative to the viewer. Objects closer to you will have more contrast and will be more colorful. Objects that are further away will have less contrast and less saturation. However, even this rule is somewhat generalized. Objects that are on the edge of the painting will be less dynamic than the ones closer to the middle. They can still have some contrast, but the purpose is for them to be more obscure, and so as a result, this will draw more attention towards the focal point. It's so easy to think that you actually finish a painting once you filled up all the space and got some detail in, but have you considered that maybe you sold yourself short on creating something even more epic if you took the time to create a more distant vanishing point? That's what's important about painting landscapes, making sure you create a three-dimensional effect in the overall composition. If you paint a bunch of trees, clouds, and rocks, but they all align next to each other without any depth, your painting is going to look flat. Taking the time to understand dimensions and using reference lines can be challenging, but that can indeed take your art to the next level. So after I started using these techniques, it actually helped re-inspire my creativity. It's not fun when you're hitting a plateau with your painting, especially when your last 3, 5, or 10 paintings all end up looking the same. So I hope you found this video useful. Think about what I said here, and maybe this can help you break through any stagnation that you may have experienced with your paintings. I'll see you later.